Hello everyone, it has been about 6 months since I've uploaded the last video here. Normally I do it a little bit more polished, but we're doing it in the messy office because I'm cleaning up right now, and I didn't want to wait to have like a full nice setup day because I've just been thinking a lot about this topic, and so hopefully you'll suffer through this. I want to talk about the state of the Magic the Gathering sealed product cost craziness that we have going on around us. Previously on this channel, I've talked about limited and that I play limited, that I play commander, a lot of the things that are more focused around the game itself, or even, the RC bands, that type of stuff. But what I want to talk about is the collectible part, because that is something that I've been doing specifically with sealed product since about 2023. I think in an earlier video I said that I started playing in the middle of 2022, but by 2023 I was hooked, and basically all of my friends were as well. And I found some places where we could get discounts if we ordered like a case of something versus individual boxes. So I started ordering, and sometimes I get a case and then I'd have a little bit extra, right? Where maybe some friends would buy some stuff and then maybe I'd have like one or two collector booster boxes extra. And I was like, oh, this will be cool. I'll just hold on to this, and maybe like someday I'll decide to open it on a special occasion, or maybe I can trade it for something or it'll gain some value. And by 2024, I started to really feel strongly that a lot of this stuff was underpriced. That was because I know that for those that don't follow this stuff as much, in 2022, I think, and maybe the beginning or halfway through 2023, probably up until about Wilds of Eldraine, a little bit extra or after that, there were just a lot of things that would drive the prices down on collector boxes specifically, but also a lot of other product. Some unpopular sets like New Capenna came out, or Baldur's Gate, with lower power. There were there were times where entire huge product lines would just get dropped on Amazon on Black Friday, and so you'd have products that would go for like 110 that were sitting in LGSs at 200. So then the LGSs would sometimes even buy some of that product, and then they would resell it themselves. That would lower the price. There were all these different forces that were doing this, but for me, I was like, okay, a lot of this is going to start to clear out of LGSs, and maybe if I hold on to this, it will start to accrue 5 to 10% over time, hopefully beat the stock market or whatever, if that's really the way people want to think about it. But I was like, okay. And I also started to notice that Magic seemed like it was becoming more and more and more popular, this big phenomenon. And so I was like, okay, I feel like this will continue. I don't think this is a flash in the pan. I think Magic is kind of having a moment. And so probably a lot of this product will do well. And so it wasn't ever a thing where I was like scalping it or like trying to rush to get it before anybody else. If anything, what would happen is, especially last year, I would start to see product that would just go get discounted because it would be sitting at an LGS for too long, or maybe it'd be online, or I would notice that you could pre-order for pretty cheap when it first went on sale. And so I started buying more. And now I'm in a really great place because I have things like Bloomborough collector boxes, which went from $200 to now over $400. And I have a Wilds of Eldraine that I kept from back then that's gone up a ton. It's just like Bloomborough. Foundations boxes did really well. The craziest thing is that I have a Lord of the Rings special edition. These were on sale on Amazon, I think, for like $370. I did not buy them when they super dropped down to like, I don't know, $270 or something at the end of 2023. But I've accrued a decent amount of collector product, and all of this stuff has now gone up a ton. I recently did inventory on all my product and used like an app, and it has accrued 40% since the time on like my whole collection since the time that I've started buying in the last 2 years, which is pretty insane. And what you started to see is that back in, well, let's say in 2023 and 2024, I'd be buying a lot of this product when I'd see people being like, oh, Foundations, no one is going to buy that. It's going to be worth nothing because they'll definitely reprint the collector boxes, even though there was no evidence they'd ever done that before. And they're like, and nothing of it is, there's no good cards in it, and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to wait to buy it whenever it's at like 120. And I'm like, okay. I just felt as though it was very unlikely that people would start to sell these boxes at a loss like they had before. So I have been buying. However, I'm starting to come to the conclusion that I need to stop buying. And it's not just because obviously it's an expensive thing to do and you have to find space in your home to do it, but because I think that Ironically, the economics of it have inverted, where back when everyone was super negative about it, it was a great time to buy. And now I think it's a pretty poor time to buy. So the biggest example of that, and this is, I'm going to talk about risk, right? Because that's really what this is about. I'm not saying that all this project is going to go to zero or that it's not going to be worth it or that it won't even grow. But I want to talk about the risk that I was taking on some of the stuff versus what the risk is like now. So I have seen the best example of this is the Final Fantasy set. So Final Fantasy releases and or gets announced and they start putting up pre-orders for all this stuff and it just skyrockets, right? Like Amazon super sells out, even though previously buying from Amazon was a bad idea because you can usually find it cheaper elsewhere for many years unless it was like the Black Friday deal. Previously you just didn't buy like whatever Amazon was selling it at because you could find it oftentimes at your LGS for like the same price or cheaper. And I saw the Final Fantasy stuff just it got wiped out on Amazon, and then immediately after, what started happening is any place who had posted it immediately pulled it down. So the places I normally look to buy stuff online had pulled it all down, and the places that were starting to post it were posting it way higher than the Amazon price. And so what I want to do is use an example of like the Foundations collector box, right? So I think I bought this for like $195. For a while, the standard collector booster box for like a standard set was going to be about $200 is usually what it would come out at, and then maybe it would dip a little bit if it was unpopular, or it would go up if it was popular. But I bought this for about $195. Let's just say $200. Now what would happen, and you're seeing this with Dragonstorm, for instance, is that these are going for the standard collector booster box is going from like 280 to maybe even 310. Aether Drift went up actually, and then it came down again, which is kind of funny. But this is becoming it's harder now because if I had bought this 280 instead of 195, yes, I would have made I would have accrued value in it, but I wouldn't have accrued as much. And the risk starts to become higher the higher cost the box is, not just in terms of how much money you're necessarily floating, but let's say that like the anchor price on a box like this is like 195 because maybe it costs a store like 170, 180 or something like that from a distributor. So like it's going to be hard for them to want to sell it at a loss. That means that you're sitting kind of at a floor and you have a lot of space that you can go up to, you know. The scary thing is if I had bought this at 310, yes, it would have gone up. It wouldn't have gone up that much, but the chance that it could have gone down is a lot higher. So like, oh, I don't have an Aether Drift collector. Actually, let's do this. Innistrad is a good example of this. Innistrad collector boosters boxes were probably what I think they went up to like 310 or 320, and then they started to crash down a lot. And so if you'd been able to buy this for like 230, 240 a box, then you'd be still okay. But my point is that we're starting to reach way above what the cost is to buy from distributors for some of the stuff, which is in one sense great because I think for a long time LGSs and people were kind of just like existing on these very minimal margins, and now hopefully they can start to like have healthier businesses and build up some savings so that if there's some sort of recession or a crash in the Magic space or something, they can weather it a little bit more. On the other hand, it makes it for me a lot more worrying to try to buy a lot of different product because the chance that stuff goes down a ton is pretty high. So right now there's a ton of fervor around Final Fantasy, and I could end up being completely wrong. Like people might be, haha, I can't believe this is Travis is so stupid in 6 months from now when we're in September. And maybe Final Fantasy collector booster boxes will have gone up to like $800 or something crazy at a time whenever everybody was buying, you know, could have bought them for like 580, which is just crazy to think about, by the way. Collector booster box for 580. But I feel like we don't have enough information right now to be super confident in this purchase. Like if I could have bought Final Fantasy collector booster boxes for 400 or so, which like was roughly where Modern Horizons 3 stuff was. Actually, you could even get Modern Horizon 3 for a little bit cheaper than that. Also, where Lord of the Rings eventually ended up, the green box, the first one that came out, I would be trying to buy a couple boxes of that and be very eager about it. Maybe even up to like 430, 440, 450. But again, as you start to increase this, we don't know how much Wizards is going to be printing that set. They might print a ton of it. And I don't think that they're necessarily going to go back to the massive print runs that they had, you know, a couple of years ago. But I do think like if I'm Wizards, I'm like Final Fantasy is going to be huge. And then I actually don't know how, if they could sneak this in time, but like they were getting data really, really early on. I mean, we're talking about back in January, I think, that Final Fantasy Collector booster boxes were going to be going to be very much in demand, right? In terms of the sellout that happened so quickly on Amazon, all this type of stuff. And so I do wonder if there's even a chance where they have enough time for them to expand the print run of collector booster boxes. And if they are doing that, where they're like, oh, demand's going to be really high, we can print even more. We've got 5-month lead time. We can like up that order a little bit. Then I worry about what it could do to the prices of this stuff. Like, is there a chance that maybe the cards aren't as powerful? People don't necessarily want to open them unless they're opening them for fun, which is a great reason to open a piece of product. Then maybe that starts to put downward pressure. And I actually worry a little bit about the people who are pre-ordering out and the LGSs that are putting pre-orders up, because a lot of LGSs are starting to put pre-orders up for, again, like 580 or higher. And I think that's one, great if that ends up working out for them. But like, what happens if you pre-order at 580, Amazon comes in, starts releasing a ton of product at like 500, and then the TCG player price starts to crater, and now you have all these angry customers from 3 months ago who pre-ordered boxes for $80 more than they should be. And not to say that $80 is like the biggest gap. I mean, it's a lot of money, right? But when you're talking about a $580 product, it's not that crazy. But I'm just like, there is a lot more risk right now than there were for me, in my opinion, whenever I was buying these products, because I just needed it to be worth a little more, right, than what distributors were selling it to LGSs for. Whereas now people are going to need it to be worth a lot more than that. So I just think that my strategy is going to be, I'm not going to be buying stuff at the Final Fantasy Collector booster boxes at 580 unless I start to get a lot more data. You know, if like we somehow find out that like this is going to be a pretty limited print run, then like maybe I'm going to buy a box or something. And so I'm becoming a lot more risk adverse there, and I'm going to start to pull back a little bit, because I just think, look, when everybody was on Reddit shitting on every collector booster box, being like, I'm going to buy it when it's 40% off, great time to buy. What everybody on Reddit is like, please show me a place that has selling it even if it's 40% above MSRP, then I'm like, this is maybe not a great time to buy. Even though I know there's a lot of demand and I know Final Fantasy is going to be popular, etc. That's just why I'm thinking risk equals higher. The other stuff I want to talk about a little bit in terms of just some general stuff is play booster boxes. So actually, we could talk about both of these at the same time. So play booster boxes and commander decks. I, for a while, was sort of purchasing more of these whenever I'd buy these collector booster boxes, and I have to buy some of the play booster boxes anyway because I run a group of people that play, and we have sometimes like 20, 30, 40 people that show up. So I need the product, but I would try to also save some of it for myself. What I am realizing is that this is probably old hat to some people who've been in the space for a while, that this stuff, just because it's inherently going to get print runs or like additional print runs, especially if it's popular, it's just not worth ever buying it at more than like MSRP, or like even sometimes at MSRP. I think, I mean, first off, I think MSRP is pretty high compared to where things should be, but like, I don't probably want to buy a play booster box, well, at least back when there were 36 of them, for like 120, for more than 125, and now that there's only 30 of them, I don't want to probably buy them above 30, even though I know that in the short term they will go up, because I don't have the methods for me to like offload product or sell it. Like, I can't capture when Bloomberg goes from like 125 up to like 150 or 160 before its print run. I don't have a great way to like flip that product or sell it, and it's just like, I'm not an LGS. I'm not going to be able to profit off of that. The same thing goes with commander decks. So Eternal Might popped off. I guess I can look it up right now, but Eternal Might popped off a ton whenever it came out, and even like before it came out, people just knew, like, because the deck is really fun and there's all that stuff, and people like zombies are very popular. It popped off a ton. And then what I've noticed is that, because I was like, oh, cool, I've got like an extra box of that. That'll be cool. It has started to crash a ton. So it went all the way up to $70. Now it's at like 55, and it's probably going to keep going lower. And then I think what's going to happen is there's a decent chance that in the next 6 months, or I don't know, even like 12 months, they do another print run of this, and then these things go down to like 40. So maybe even 35. So I think my new strategy with play booster boxes and commander decks is that I do think that they go up over time, and they can be good pickups if you want to like collect this stuff and feel like it's going to gain value over time. But I think my new strategy is going to be to wait until they're doing like a second or third print run on this stuff and then grab it. Because we saw that happen with Wilds of Eldraine Draft and Set recently, where like that stuff started to go up. The craziest one, I don't know if people have noticed this, but I bought a case of the Warhammer 40k commander decks, not like the collector ones, just like the regular ones, when they were like going for maybe like 160 or something on their final print run. Stores were just sort of like trying to get that inventory off their books, and I bought it for like 160. I want to say it was probably maybe it was like 180, and that thing is now over. It's like $500. So I do think like a good time to pick these up is like if you're paying attention and you can grab them as they're going out of print. So like that would mean that probably I'd be trying to buy, if I could, one of these in about 12 to 18 months. Whenever I see stores start to kind of like drop them from like a final order that they did. And then similarly, I think these will probably be available at the 120, 125 mark for a while. Probably like 12 months from now, you'll be able to get it for that. And so I think that's when I would probably want to purchase these. Maybe even they go down to 115. I don't know if a store's trying to get rid of them because they order too much. So that is my strategy, and that's where I'm kind of at on sealed product. And so I wanted to put this out there because I know a lot of people like to do this. It's very fun to buy, I'm going to buy a Final Fantasy Collector booster box, and then I'm going to open one, and then I'll buy a second, and I'll keep that sealed. But like, I just think the good time, maybe I'm wrong, but for me, my worry is that the risk has gone up so high. I'm not saying that like you won't be able to get, gains, if you want to call it that. I'm just saying it's a lot riskier than it was. And what I think a lot of people are doing is they're looking at the results of purchases that people were making a year ago, 18 months ago, and seeing how that panned out now. And they aren't necessarily thinking about like that was a very different environment than the one that we're in now. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about risk in the Magic space and buying sealed product and where I'm kind of at, because I feel like everybody else is pumping this stuff right now and being like, yo, it's ever been a better time to buy it. And I'm like, actually, I think the better time to buy it was 12 months ago. Thanks so much for watching. Random Magic video. Maybe I'll do another video sometime soon.